introduction to get the show on the road?
Yep.
Ready, aim, fire.
Ready, aim, fire. Now, I don't know how you're looking at it, but on my right is Clint Rowlings. He is a former Australian age group champion. I did have this up on the screen. I've minimised it, so I'm just making it up as I go now. A 70.3 age group Australian champion. Is that right? Top 10 finisher a few times? You've done a bit.
Top 10. Top 10 overall.
Top 10 overall.
Yeah.
And since he's only just recently he's just taken a little bit of a break from competing himself. He's moved into the coaching world. And I was introduced to Clint at Port Macquarie Ironman. He was an absolute pest on the sideline. But it was great to hear from a stranger some positive affirmations coming over. And I've since befriended him, and I've worked with him with my own issues with training. I've seen him coach Reece Corbishley, one of our All Sorts members and BOTTLE.IT team members over in Kona. And I've had fortunately enough, in Cairns and in Kona, I've sat sideline with Clint and watched him interact with his own athletes and how he gets the best out of his athletes and how he communicates. And I'm personally, just quickly, mate, very stoked that you've jumped on to give us your time. It's very valuable. You're a smart man, and I'm looking forward to pick your brain so these guys get the best out of their Noosa race day experience.
Thanks, mate. That's nice words. Thanks a lot.
I have to, man. It's recording. You know what happens when it stops recording? You get the truth. Mate,
Yes.
A lot of people, this is unlike to go from one end to another. We were at the Kona World Champs 2 weekends ago. I just like saying it over and over again to let everyone know that I was in Hawaii. We're coming back to Noosa Triathlon, and this is the first race for myself that gave me a taste of what triathlon can be and what the Ironman community and how supportive the Ironman community is. And it gave me the desire to do more. A lot of the people in the All Sorts, this is either one of their first races or their first races at this distance. So there are a lot of debutants, a lot of nervous people, mate, and we're just kind of hoping to work through it with your good self. Is there anything that you'd like to acknowledge at the start, or anything we should know before we rip into the actual race day?
I guess you saying that's one of the first races that you got a taste of a bigger race on the calendar is probably the same for me. We went up there. We used to go up there all the time back in the day. Like, I would have probably been going there since I was about 10. And it's just such an awesome event. Like the days before it with the running events, the criteriums, the swim runs. I remember being like a young kid, and people like Grant Hackett, Ian Thorpe, Jeff Hugel, those kind of guys would be there, and you could actually like get introduced to them. And then a lot of the guys who were good at Ironman later on were the ones who were like killing it at Noosa when I was a young fella. So you've kind of been up there, seen them progress through that, and then they've gone to Ironman as well. But it's you guys are in for a treat. It's a really good. It's one of the Olympic distance races around that you get like a really good vibe from. Like it's a real good atmosphere in town, and it feels like a big event. Where other ones, especially now with the way that road closures and things like that are, sometimes they don't have that real like. There's something happening in town, where when you get to Noosa, you'll really get that. So like, just enjoy it. Enjoy that whole, not only the race, make sure you go and watch the like the criteriums on the Saturday and the running events, and kind of get involved in the whole thing.
I went straight from the elite energy events down here that we had at Foster, and we felt like we were like there was pitchforks and people with flaming torches wanted to chase us out of Foster. Like there was no support, there was no encouragement. Then we drove up to Foster, and just to touch on what you're saying, the whole town is PA'd up. The sound system is on. All you can hear is the music and the commentators for those events. Yeah. And the Saturday before the event, like you said, those ASICs, is it 10K or 5K run?
5K, I think.
The 5K sprint 5K. And the crit race through town. We only wanted to be there for half an hour. We don't spend the whole day in there. It's such a vibe and such a great, and the whole town, like every store celebrate you being there to spend your money. Like it's the opposite.
Which is a rarity in this sport these days, mate. The towns that really like you being there and appreciate you going there to spend money, that's a rarity. So yeah, it's you guys will love it. It's going to be good.
What is when you come in, when you're competing, mate, when you're when you're 4 sleeps out from an event, what's your process, mate? What should our athletes that are listening be going through at home? Is there things they should be packing? What's your system you have in place?
Well, exactly that. It's a system. Having, yet again, just been overseas, and you're watching the guys who are racing go through their process, and that's exactly what it is. It's a process of like everything in the training, everything the whole way through is a process until you get to the gun going off, and then the next step in the process is racing, right? So now's the time to be making sure you've got write a list of everything that you think that you're going to need to take up for that race, whether it's for the actual specifics of the race or like your bike pump or your number belt or whatever it is. If you've just got it all written down, and it might, so 4 days out, I'd always just have a bit of paper sitting on the bench at home. And there's always those things. And actually another thing I'll do is just before I travel to an event, I've got 2 or 3 people, I'll send them a message and just say, tell me 3 things I would have forgotten. And they'll always message back and say, this, and this. And likely there'll be something in that I've gone, oh, I didn't pack that. So write down what you think you're going to need. Tick that off as you pack it. And just stick to that process. And once you've got all your stuff organized, then if everything on your list is ticked off, then there's no stress. And beauty of going to this race, it's not like some far, you're not going to Asia or something where you can't get things. But if you get there and you've forgotten something, as long as you've got your bike and yourself, it's not going to be overly expensive. So it's just...
Am I right in saying that most things you need come race day, you'll be able to buy at the Athletes Exhibition tent?
Mate, yes. The only thing that you wouldn't want to probably buy is a bike. Therefore, if you've got your bike and yourself, you're sweet. So it's just, if you just write down your list of all the things you're going to need before travel, and then similarly, when you get up there, having that same process for the steps you need to tick off to be ready to race, being like the check-in process, the getting all your gear organized, the training you want to do, whatever you need to do. If you write that down, you just tick it off as you go. The last thing would probably be walk out the door and make sure you got your pump in your gear for transition, and away you go. But it's just sticking to your process is the easiest way to negate nerves.
I like that, mate. It's a really great way to move that mental anxiety and stress you have before a race about what you need by putting it on a physical place like a list. I'm up to my 4th list of things I'll need. I've gone as far, and hopefully this gets your nod of approval, that I actually work out, when I wake up, what I eat, what I'll need in the hotel room or the Airbnb, so I can grab it on the Saturday beforehand. So I'll start 5 a.m. oats, banana, and then work through the whole day with what I need away from the race, and I add layers to that. So does that get a nod of approval from you, mate?
It certainly gets the nod of approval, mate. I stayed with a guy in Cairns who was racing in the pro field, and he literally had step by step every single thing that he had to do from the moment he woke up. He had it all written down. So then, not so much that he needed to follow that. He's not going to wake up and look at it and go, that's right, I've got to go to the toilet. But it's like, it's written down just so he knows that his process, he can read it, he can visualize it. It's like, it's there written, ready to go, and he just follows it on the morning and looks through it all and goes, I've done all that. Great. So it's a very easy way to alleviate some of the stress if you're stressed about it. Other side of that is if you're not stressed about it, like I never really got overly nervous. So to be really relaxed is good sometimes, but it's also like sometimes you're just like, it's all good, doesn't matter. And then you turn up there and go, I forgot to pack my shoes. It's a bad way to be. So like either way, whether you are nervous or you're just I guess excited about it, then it's either way, it's good to have it all written down for sure.
For someone who hasn't raced before, what are a couple of the main things that you'd have written down for the race? Like the swim's pretty simple with your swim cap and your goggles. When you move into T1 to get on the bike, mate, what are some of the basics that everyone should have on their bike or should have on them in transition before they head out for the bike ride?
So you'll set up your transition on morning of the race. First thing I would say it's such a big transition there. So when you put your bike in, make sure you have a mental cue of, like it's in a park area, so there'll be trees, there'll be all kinds of different things there. But when you put your bike in, make sure you take the time to look where you come out of the swim and the path that you're going to take to your bike to where your transition is. And there may be, you'll actually probably see it up there. Sometimes people get crafty with it and they'll just tie a little bit of ribbon on the fence. or something like that. And you might think, well, what's that? But it's so when they come out of the water, they run across Hastings Street, come into transition, and they see the ribbon, they turn left, because the transitions are so big that if you don't have that mental cue, when your heart rate's really high and you've just come out of the water and you start running over, you always see it where people are like, they come out of the water and and they're trying to look and find where their bike is, and they've got no idea because they haven't taken the time to look at it. So ideally you do that Saturday when you put your bike in, but morning of, turn up, just make sure you've got your bottles for hydration on your bike. So you'll obviously pack them the morning of, and just your shoes and helmet are going to be sitting closer because you're going to get to them first, obviously. Helmet on, shoes on, and then when you come back, you'll either take your feet out of the shoes on the bike, so they'll be on the bike, and then you just have your run shoes and your hat or sunglasses and your race belt there. So it's just, yet again, if you write your list and you put transition 1 and you write what you need, and then transition 2 and what you need, you'll put that all in a bag and you just carry that down on race morning. Set it up there. Happy days.
What's your especially for the guys that this may be their first, this is the deep end of transitions for a lot of these guys, but even myself included. There's the field is about 3,500 people deep. I'm pulling a number out of my ass there, but it's a lot of people racing on that day.
I think it's bigger, yeah.
It's a zoo. There are so many, there's 100 rows of bikes. There's so much going on. There's people running and pushing and jostling for position, mate. What's your advice? Like, if you're racing for sheep stations, you've obviously know what you're doing. You're getting in and you're getting out. For the guys, this is their first one. Is it as important for them to get in and get out, or would you tell them to slow down, find their rhythm, find their spots? What advice do you get for the
sure
debut?
No, it's a lot of people, like, one of the best things I've ever heard someone say to me about transitions is hurry slowly. So you get through there, you hurry, like you have your method, and you do it quickly, but you don't stress about it and don't get frantic, because you actually see it with people's Garmin files. If they're really like analytical and they do their transition, that the heart rate numbers through transitions, if they're trying to get through there and they're frantic, their heart rate's absolutely sky high. So once you come in there, just take your time. I mean, you're going to likely, if you go a little bit, if you hurry slowly, you're probably going to be just as quick as if you went through there with a frantic thought process, because if you're just calm about it, you do everything efficiently instead of getting through there like freaking out. I can't get my shoe on. I can't get my shoe. Like, just take your time, have your process that you've thought about when you get there, and just run through it. It's really not like it's a drop in the ocean of your day. You might take 20 seconds longer if you're just cruise through there. So yeah, it's huge. Like, the transition area is massive. So just take your time, and it'll be a lot more enjoyable.
Mate, we're pumping out. We're on the ride. We've just ridden out of town. We've got supporters going nuts left and right. We're following the signage. It's really well signed. There's nothing to report with anyone getting lost or knowing where to go. You cannot get lost on that course, mate. Riding with a group or riding with a crowd when you've got people coming left and right. We'll get to Garmin Hill, but on the way out to Garmin Hill, mate, any advice for a cyclist that hasn't experienced people going past them? Like, should they stay left? Should they stay right? What would you tell?
You've got to be aware, like really aware of your surroundings, but also you've got to think for yourself, but also everyone around you, right? So if you're riding along and say you're staying out of the way because there's people coming past, but you come up to a slower rider, make sure you just check that someone's not there, because, and the same thing, if you're going past someone, just think for them, because maybe there's a slower person in front of them and they'll just swerve out. So as long as you're making your decisions based on everyone else, you'll be okay. It is a bit through town. It's a little bit, it can be a bit crazy in terms of, like, there's just a lot going on because of so many wave starts. You might be riding past people that you're a lot stronger than, and the same thing, there might be quicker people coming past, but just don't make any like sudden movements without thinking about what you're doing, because that's where, yeah, you might go to swerve around someone and there's someone coming on your right, and if they haven't yelled out on your right, it can get pretty dangerous. So just take your time through there and make sure that you're thinking for yourself and also the people around you when you're passing or being passed.
Is that a polite thing to let someone know on your ride as you go around them?
Yes, definitely. It's not so like polite. It's probably good for your ego too when you go past, because you're telling them that you're going quicker than them. But it just lets them know that you're there, because if they're having that thought process of there's someone in front, I'm about to pass them, and they hear on your right, then they won't, swerve out and go crazy. So yeah, letting people know, and the same thing, you'd hope that anyone behind you would let you know.
Guys, just quickly before we get to Garmin Hill, if anybody's listening and anybody has any questions about any of these areas that me and Clint are discussing, please throw a hand up, throw a thumb up. Let us know that you have a question. There are no stupid questions. They've all been asked. Clint gets them asked daily. I work with 3-year-olds. I get them asked daily. Honestly, we'd rather you guys ask a question than worry about this. Yeah, shoot, Sarah, the floor is yours.
Hey, quick question. Just going back to the swim, in terms of how crowded the swim is and trying to navigate through that first part, are there any tips of stay left, stay right, try and stay out of the middle of the pack?
I knew we missed something, Clint. I knew we missed
anything around the swim.
That's all on you, Bo. You skip to the right. So with the swim setup, I'd allow yourself ample time before your swim start so you can warm up to the right-hand side of where the swim starts. I'd take 5 minutes, because it's not really cold. You can get in the water and you're not gonna freeze, like standing on the beach waiting to start. So I'd take the time to get in, warm up, like just swim for a couple of minutes just to get some blood into your shoulders, so you're not like starting completely cold. And with the swim start, it'll be a rolling start. So you'll go 4 at a time. And with the way that swim is, you do swim a fair way before you actually have to make a left-hand turn. And so it's not so stressful, because you get to start with just 3 others. But what I would say is, when you're doing the rolling start, if you breathe when you're swimming hard, so we'll say I breathe to my right. So like I'll breathe every second stroke to my right. So what I'll do when there's the 4 starting spots, I'll start to the left. So as you go in the water and you start to swim and you're taking your breaths, you can see the people next to you. So you can see that they're on course, but also you're not going to run into them. So that would be the one thing that I would definitely make that decision before you get there on where you're going to start, to the left or the right. And also with a beach start, you really should just cruise. As you get in, get to waist deep water, a couple of dolphin dives, and then go. Really don't, like you see it at races all the time, like people rage into the water, they run so fast and they dive, and then you'll swim about 200 meters and your heart rate's just absolutely like sky high. And then you spend the next 500 meters of the swim trying to recover. So you're better off taking your time as you get into the water, and just really ease into it. I don't think there's going to be any waves, but as you go through, like your dolphin dive, start swimming, and just take that first couple of minutes, even to the first turn, to just focus on breathing and making sure you're going in the right direction. And a lot of that can be, if you've started on the right, the side that you look at everyone, you can let them do the sighting ahead when they're swimming, and you can kind of just keep an eye as you're breathing that you're staying next to them, instead of spending the whole time looking where you're going. So that would be the number one thing, is just ease into the water. Don't go crazy. And that's something that you see a lot of people do.
Just to help reassure you there, Sarah, where would the charity wave start? And the group of 50 of us that will be starting, we all start together. So you're starting in the front, the middle, or the back of us. And there are 50 of your mates, 50 people that are in the same tri-suit. None of us are going to want to punch you, pull you, jostle for position in the first couple of kilometers. So I hope that puts you at ease.
That is huge. That's huge, because like you see it in those wave starts where, like, there's been races in the past where they've started like the younger guys 2 minutes behind like 65 plus age group, and you just swim through them, and it's just cruel. So when you've got the water to yourself, and because it's very, very well spaced out there, you'll be fine. By the time you're starting to get a rhythm, you'll be perfectly fine. So that's a huge benefit for being in the charity wave.
100%. I love the swim there. Like I said, you get to spot a few people.
Yep.
Yeah. And by the time you get out, some faster swimmers are coming, but we get the benefits of a uncrowded swim. And then the course is empty too, even for that first 10 Ks of your bike ride. You get out of town before you get some age groupers coming through and letting you know that they're racing the world champs.
That is huge, because that, like, you guys, if you're in the water first, you guys, some of you will be off. You might even be close to finished and people haven't even started. Like, there's that many waves through the day. So getting the course, we had all sorts of
2019 that we were finished and like recovering in the recovery tent before they'd started their run.
Yeah. So you'll get
humble brag.
You get the clear course, you get the cooler weather, you get the early conditions.
Aid stations are full.
Yeah, mate, that's all good. That's a real positive. So yeah, the swim will be a lot less stressful for people who are worried about it because of that, for sure.
Out of the water, straight onto we've fast forward back up now. We're back to where we are at the bottom of Garmin Hill, mate. Any advice for people riding up the hill if this is one of their first big-ish climbs?
I think, like, we spoke about it very briefly, where you said about one of the other guys asked me about Garmin Hill, and I'm like, they need something to talk about, right? When it comes to race courses, like they do it with Ironman at Port Macquarie and Matthew Flinders, where it's like a few hundred meters of 180K on the ride. The hill up there is like 2Ks. I think it gets spoken about a lot because there's actually the competition from bottom to top. And if you want to turn up there and go like an absolute mad dog and try and ride it as hard as you can and see how well you go at that, then likely the rest of your day isn't going to be too much fun because you'll be spent. But it's the same as anything. You just dose your effort. It's 2Ks at 3 point something %, which is, you guys in Sydney deal with that all the time. Like it's nothing at all. Just what I would say is, don't get sucked into said mad dog going crazy up the hill thinking, I might ride with them. Just ride it at your own pace and don't get carried away, because you still do have a fair way to go from there.
Hot tip for someone who doesn't like going up hills. It is actually quite a scenic ride. It's the race course they use for car races. So you've got all of the grandstands they use for the hill climbs, the chicanes around the corners, and it's in a rainforest. So you actually sit up, get comfortable, just spin and have a look around. It is a nice part of the ride. And then once you get up the top of that, you're up around some farms, and then you get to drop back down it, and you get to go fast back down it. So it's not all bad. We finished the ride, Clint. What do you want to see when you see people get off the bikes? How should these guys be getting off the bike when they come into T2? Should they be absolutely cooked, or should they be relatively okay? What are you looking for as a coach?
You want to see them calm, like not panting, not like frantic about things, just getting off. For these guys especially, you want to see them enjoying it, because any race like this is like, you don't want to finish it and then go, well, I don't even remember everything. It just hurt. You're better off. And a lot of the time you get a better result when you just calm and enjoy the day, but you go at a solid intensity, but you just enjoy it and take it all in. In saying that, take it all in, because there'll be so many people there, and it'll be a hive of activity. The one thing you guys will have is you'll have people coming in from the water as you're coming off the bike, because there'll be that much going on. So just have your wits about you yet again, because it is pretty tight in there. Hurry slowly. Don't stress. You kind of just get through there. You get through there as efficiently as you can with just following the same process, right? You've thought about it. When you get this race day morning, you look at it and you go, okay, I'm going to come in off the bike, got to leave my helmet on until I rack my bike, helmet off, drop down, shoes on. You can put your number belt on as you start running. You don't have to stand there and do that. And then it's just, yet again, make sure you've got the right, you've taken the time to look where you're going to go through transition through the racks, because there's going to be so many racks.
It's also coming back in through town. It does get skinny and a bit hectic, but it's the only time in your life where you'll be riding and there's 4 kilometers of people cheering you on. You never hear that.
So yeah, yet again, just enjoy it. Like that's the bit through town too. That's probably almost you've got to have your wits about you more then, because people are getting fatigued and making ordinary decisions while they're riding. So as you get back to town, it does get pretty tight because of the way the course is. Just make sure if you're going past someone, you're letting them know. If someone's getting too close, let them know you're there. And just if you're going to pass, make sure that someone's not screaming up the side of you, because yeah, it does get pretty tight through there.
Right, I'm with you now. We're back out.
One thing I would say through that last 4Ks is that's a great time to just reassess and think to yourself, have I drunk enough? I mean, one thing I wouldn't suggest is getting a kilometre from getting off the bike and sculling a whole water bottle. But that's the time where, like 4Ks from home, if you think to yourself, all right, I'll finish that bottle now and I might have a gel or whatever you've tried in training, that's a good time to just assess what you've done and going, yep, I've had enough to drink. Okay, I'm good here. Because that's the bit through town where you can't really ride absolutely crazy because there's a lot going on. That's the time to just assess what you've done and go, all right, I've drunk enough and I'm good to run.
On the run course, talk us through, they've just added a 6th aid station, mate. It's a 10K run, which is a fair run. It's still a sizable run at the end of a hot day up in Queensland, mate. What's your process on a hot day to run through a 10K run off a bike?
Well, you've said it earlier that you guys are going to get the pick of the aid stations. So there's going to be, the good thing about that is too, the volunteers are always pretty motivated. So they're really willing to help out. Take your time through the aid stations. Obviously, without saying, but make sure you are drinking, because sometimes when your heart rate's so high, you're just not thinking that clearly. So if you just take the time to make sure you get some either electrolytes or water through the first 6 to 7 kilometers, and then if you feel like it, they've probably got Coke on course. It's always enough. The Black Doctor will always get you home. But the other thing is water over your head or over your tri-suit is always good to help you cool down. So pretty simple, but you just got to make sure you're drinking, really. Otherwise, you'll fast know about it.
100%. I like to find the spectators with the garden hoses and the volunteers with the garden hoses. Make friends with them early. They'll get you cool.
They do love a garden hose up there. So if you're running along and you spot them far away, give them the yes please, give them the thumb of approval or something, and you'll cop the garden hose. So for those guys who haven't potentially run without socks on, like if any of them haven't practiced that, don't be afraid to take the time and just put your socks on, honestly, because you're going to have wet feet for 10Ks. If you get to the first aid station and you throw water over your head, and they're the stories that you always see where people, take photos and their feet are completely butchered because they haven't practiced running without socks on. And so running 10Ks without socks on can be bad enough, but running 10Ks without socks on and you've got drenched feet, it can go pear-shaped pretty quickly. So if you're not confident with that, take the 10 seconds, 20 seconds to put socks on.
It's one of those transition tips that, I'll save 10 seconds in transition, but lose 15 minutes on the course running with a blister. Well,
you'll save 10 seconds in transition, but you'll have a month of people. If you wear Birkenstocks or thongs anywhere, people look down at your feet the whole time because they're just a murder scene.
I'm more worried about the performance at the surf club dance floor. You can't do anything with blisters.
Well, put your socks on, Bo. Otherwise, you won't be able to dance properly, mate.
I'll be wearing socks with Berkeys the whole weekend, mate, just to keep those bad boys under wraps, mate. How good. Let's get across that finish line, and I'd like to tell people what to do here, if you don't mind, Clint. If you jump in and tell me if I'm leading these guys astray. Take your time, for the love of God, getting across that finish line. There's professional photographers there. You've just sacrificed for the last 2 months. We've been shaking the can for charity. We've traveled that far. This race, as much as 2 to 3 hours to 4 hours, feels like such a long time when you're doing it. The race is over in the blink of an eye and you've got nothing left to show but your finish line photo. So take the time, stop just before it, walk over the line, get your photos, smile big, and really enjoy it, because nobody but you has done the work to get you to that finish line. So really enjoy it. Have you got anything on that last 100 meters, Clinton?
Mate, just exactly what you said. You take the time. There's like that, the big grandstand, like everyone's cheering for you. Just enjoy it. And then one thing I always say to people with these kind of events is when you go over the line, do take, like, as you go over the line, take the time to just take a few mental snapshots, because once the pain subsides from the racing, they're the things that you remember down the track. And they're the things that'll actually make you want to go back. You think about it and you go, that was pretty cool. You know, and the other thing too is if you've got friends or family there and you see them in that last few 100 meters, take the time to say thank you, because you might be training hard, but they also make sacrifices along the way for what you do. So let them know you appreciate it, because that'll mean a lot to them. It'll also mean a lot to you down the track too. So
it's unreal. I'm Toey Az. I'm ready to hit a finish line, a start line, everything in between. Clint, I consider myself very lucky. I chew your ear most days with some of the most ordinary questions you've ever heard. Does anybody else who's listened to us talk through the race day have questions about the day before, the day after, or the day of that they want to throw their hand up and take the floor? The floor is yours, guys.
anything.
I tell you what, for a bunch.
I'm full of questions. I've got one. Where do you put in the morning of your car keys? You're coming in. Where do you put your car keys and phone?
So they'll have a bag drop area. So they'll give you a bag that'll say, it'll be like your street gear bag, it'll be called, or something like that. And that you'll get that when you check in, and you just put your, like, you can walk down there with, you know, your clothes on, phone, keys, all that, and you've just got your number on that actual bag, like your race day number. And when you get your stuff ready in transition, you put it all down, you look at it, you work out your path in and out of transition for both T1 and T2, and then you go, okay, I think I'm good to go here. I'm going to go down the beach, chuck your clothes, your keys, your phone in the street bag, and there'll be somewhere that'll say bag drop or street gear drop, and you just leave it there. And then when you finish, it'll be sitting there ready to go. That's actually probably one thing also to take into account. If you're like going down the beach and you've got a fair amount of time, just take a bottle of water with you, because it'll likely be pretty warm. And so like there'll be a bin down there somewhere, and you can just keep sipping on either electrolytes or water before you start, as opposed to a lot of the time, like you might have to be out of, you guys should be okay, but like you got to be able to transition 40 minutes, 45 minutes before start time, and people just stand around, they're sweating, and then you've gone all of a sudden an hour and a half without having anything to drink, and you're already kind of starting the day a little dehydrated. But yeah, so that would be one thing. Just take that in your street gear bag, and then when you drop the street gear bag, take the bottle with you.
That's great, chat. I like that. Sammy, what have you got for us, mate?
Caffeine intake on the day. I love a coffee. What should we be doing in that regard?
Mate, obviously you stick to your routine in the morning that you have done in training. So like if you get up in the morning, you have a coffee or two coffees, maybe, by the sounds of things, before you start training, then stick to that same routine. There is studies out there that say anything over about 500 milligrams, it's not beneficial. So, I mean, that's still 5 strong coffees. So I would say for someone who, you stick to what you've done in training, but also you're not going to get any benefit over having, say, 2 caffeine gels on race day. Yeah. All it does is, all it'll mean is after the race, you'll probably have a thumping headache because you'll be slightly dehydrated and really caffeinated. So I would say stick to what you've done in training pre-race, and hopefully, if you haven't really tried it during the race, I'd probably steer clear of it, except for Coke on the run.
Yeah.
Coke's the it's the black doctor, mate. It'll get you home. But yeah, stick to the plan of, like, obviously you'd have caffeine before you train most days. Otherwise you wouldn't be much fun to be around. So just stick to that same plan for sure.
Cheers.
I like that. You also run the risk of being caught out without a toilet, mate. The portal.
Well, I wasn't going to mention that, but
that's a safe place here, mate.
That's certainly one thing that with 3,500 odd competitors and you guys being in the first wave, hopefully you can go to the toilet before you get to transition and don't have any nervous poos happening, because the lineups will be almost as long as the lineups at the surf club afterwards.
I like how cautiously you guided your way through that sentence.
That does sound like
thank you so much on behalf of not only the All Sorts and the guys in this chat that'll listen to this. Thank you so much for your time. I know the Kids Foundation also appreciate your time, mate. You didn't have to do this. You're in bed before 7 p.m. most nights to get up early and train. The guys that are live, anyone listening, jump onto RPG Coaching's Instagram. They're one of the only clubs that share information race day after the race and share some amazing insights into how not only their professional athletes they're racing for them, but their everyday athletes can find amazing ways to train. So yeah, once again, Clint and everyone for jumping on. Having these questions has really helped us hopefully answer some of them. Yeah,
sure.
Thanks, Clint.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for everyone for asking questions, because it does make it easier. Because once we get chatting, it normally seems to flow.
Mate, I missed the swim. I missed the swim.
We got back to the swim, mate. That's all that matters. But
I'm upset that Gabby's, in my speaker view, Gabby's photo's gone because of her display picture is smiling. Every time I looked up, I thought, gee, Gabby's enjoying this. It made me feel really good. Thank you, Gabby.
She's still smiling.
Well, good.
Awesome.
But I guess the one takeaway too, I would say, is just make sure you enjoy it. Like, it's when you train for these events, or even if you haven't done much training, it's a long way to go, one, to the venue, but two, the distance of the race. It's a fairly long way to just be miserable the whole time. So make sure you enjoy it, because genuinely the only person who cares about your race day time is you. Everyone else will forget about it in a week. Even the people who care about you, they'll forget about it in a week, and they'll go, Bo did Noosa Triathlon. How good's that? They raise money for charity. It's not about times. It's just about having a good time. So enjoy it.
Good advice. Cheers, mate.
No worries.
Thank you, Clint. Thank you, guys. We'll see you guys all at Noosa.
Thanks.